Good evening, everyone. So today we have a very senior faculty with us today. So Dr. Amitav sir will be teaching us about ethics in research. So first, sir, this is like a 6 month fellowship course. So all the biomedicine students are here. So most of the students are working professionals. So most of them do not attend live. However, they do attend the recording sessions. So we need to like make sure to record this session because whenever like they will watch this video according to their feasibility. Later on also we can get some questions which I will be communicating with you and addressing to them. So very welcome, sir. Thank you for joining in. So you may start the session, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure always to come on this platform of American Academy of Yoga and Medicine. So today we'll be talking about the ethics in research. It's an important topic, and I'll just give a brief conceptual overview and how what are the core principles, and I'll be giving some references to about the ethics in research, and after I will spend a little time on publication misconduct also, because they are first is you do your research, then the second part of research is publication. So the ethical principles also apply while you are publishing your research, and with the pressure of publication, pressure of publish or perish, there are a lot of research questionable publication practices, research publication misconduct. So I'll briefly touch on that. So I'll be sharing the screen. I'll just have some slides. We can uh, talk around those slides. So I'll just share the screen. I'll do it slide so. So I hope you can see the screen, Harshita. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Ah, so this is the topic ethics in research. So this would be the scope of the session. That it is ethics is always a bit different shades of gray, one can say. It is never black and white, and so it is a subtle. We will try to convey the subtle nature of ethics, how difficult depending on certain contexts. So we'll be giving some examples. I'll start with Western philosophy, how the ethical principles since the time of Moses to the present day. And I will be ending with the Eastern philosophy. So we should cover both the Western and Eastern thought on ethics, and both come to the same conclusion. The ethics can be difficult. And the social and cultural factors have an impact on interpretation of ethical principles. So it is not in a vacuum. The context is important, and judgment is there. Human judgment is there, and always there can be, at times, there can be some residual issues which cannot be resolved. So, which will always be a dilemma. And of course, there are certain basic principles which can be spelled out. So that, but sometimes these principles also contradict with each other in a particular context. And then how to apply these principles in resolving dilemmas in medical research. And postscript is, as I said, after you do your research, the publication is the second step. And one has to follow ethics in publication also. So we will be briefly discussing the different types of research misconduct. So what is ethics? Ethics is something between, is it a law, or is it a behavior, or is it a, it's a philosophy. Different people may have different
Value related to human content, rightness or wrongness of certain action.
and the ethics is
Dr.
basically,
Kartika, please mute.
so it's a branch of philosophy. It can be debatable, and it is concerned with the value related to human conduct. Different cultures may have different value systems. Certain things may be ethical in some culture, it may be unethical. Different countries have different abortion laws, different contraceptive laws. So these are different value systems. So you have to see the background, culture, rightness or wrongness of certain actions. Basically, it's a to do the right thing. I mean, which you are taught from childhood. Now we have to relearn it because a child is the most, innocent person. As the child grows up, all these guiles and all the uh, manipulation starts, and we stray away from the innocence of childhood. So we have to again learn back those rightness and wrongness as our parents or teachers must have taught us. So different cultures, and as we have already discussed, and societies may have different value systems. So this is, as I said, I will give you a dilemma. This is from the Western philosophy, from Moses to Einstein. They say that Western philosophy, I had read this somewhere, I think long back. I'm not exactly able to recall the source. I think it was a column written by, I think, Gursaran Das. He has quoted someone, I forget it. So he says there have been 5 Jews who gave us the value systems. The first Jew was Moses. He gave us, the Christians, the 10 commandments. He says, I'll give you the commandments, you follow the commandments, and you will not have any problems, maybe ethical or moral dilemmas. So he gave the commandments like we have the ethical guidelines. We can say that is the, just use your brain. Then came the second Jew was Jesus. He says it is not the mind, your heart should be pure. You think from the heart, you behave, you act from your heart. You have a clean heart, all your problems, you will not land into moral, forgive everyone, love everyone. That is the heart. Then the third Jew was Karl Marx. He says ethics cannot be practiced on an empty stomach. Your hunger, it drives person to unethical. So everybody should have equity. There should be equal distribution of wealth or whatever, and there will be people can behave ethically. The third Jew. And the fourth was Sigmund Freud. He says it is not the mind, not the heart, not the stomach. It is something much below the stomach. So, Sigmund Freud's obsession. He says these are our hidden desires which drives away from the moral path or whatever. And of course, last was Albert Einstein. He says neither the mind, neither the heart, neither below the stomach, nothing is absolute, everything is relative. So this is actually conveys or theme that you have the principles, say the commandments or ethical principles, and then other culture and other things, the value system, but ultimately it is relative. All depends on the context. It relative. Each ethical issue has to be judged on its merit. There is nothing in black and white. Everything is relative. So this is just to convey the subtleness, how different aspects and ethics can be difficult, and one has to use a value judgment, taking all aspects into picture. So, as we have been saying, ethical principles cannot be examined in a vacuum. The social and cultural context determines how, and this gives the theory of relativity in ethics. I mean, I am just simplifying Einstein. So it is always we are that there the your value judgment comes. That's why ethical committee have got different people from different backgrounds. So methods can be a reasoned analytical approach. First, of course, you have to use the mind. Then critical approach. Then precedents. Sometimes, like in a legal judgments, the court cases become precedent. Similarly, in ethics, what has been the answer in the past, and whether those can be applied to the present situation or present location or present culture, present people. What action to be taken and why? What are the conflicts can arise in this? Most human affairs are value laden with ethical. Beyond ethical, there may be some legal issues, then social issues and economic and political implications, leading to conflicts or uncertainty about the ethics or right action. So there are other noises from hard ethics, what is right or wrong. There may be some legal, some like, There have been cases, of an Indian woman dying in Ireland where abortion was illegal. So the ethical dilemmas, the legal dilemmas, because the law did not permit, and I think certain situations can arise due to clash between what is ethical, what is legal in a particular country, and of course what is socially acceptable in a particular country or particular religion. All these issues have to be taken when taking a ethical call, and these may be important, like some of us, most of us, as you become senior, or even you may be member of ethical committee, you may chairing ethical committee. So these are some of the research ethics. Natural conflicts may exist within an individual and between two or more individuals. There may be moral dilemma, or there may be different viewpoints, and conflict may be there. Facing and resolving the conflict lead to significant turmoil and discomfort. Ethical issues involve uncertainty. As I had said in the beginning, it is not black and white. There are different shades of gray, and it's always, you have to see the context. And always there is uncertainty and conflicting responses about course of action and values to maintain or sacrifice. And sometimes I will be coming subsequently different ethical principles. Sometimes one principle will have contradict the other principle in a particular situation. So there the moral dilemma arises. Value conflicts most visible on faces of people who are suffer. Your decision will affect the people, and your conflicts may be causing anxiety, may be causing injustice, or there may be agitation. Ethical analysis, morally and socially acceptable solution to problems of conflicts of value, the ultimate purpose to reach a conclusion, ethical call is to, which is morally and socially acceptable. Your decision should be morally and socially. Theories and principles of ethics guide in search for an appearing solution to ethical problems, much as legal and ethical precedents. So there are, of course, there are certain ethical principles, we will be enumerating them, which will act as a compass. None of those should be violated as far as possible. Articulates and justified principles that can guide moral decisions, which can be used as standards evaluation of actions policies. So those principles, ethical principles, the 5 core principles are there, which will make us critically appraise any situation. So basic, of course, as I said, as a child, children are taught around the globe, and we have to relearn this. Tell the truth. One of the principles of ethics is research integrity. Research ethics. Research. So truth is the first thing. One principle is integrity. Be proud of your accomplishment, giving credit, like authorship credit and other things will come. Don't be a, this can be a situation where you may land in individual conflict or conflict with others. Don't be a tattletale unless it is important. That is whistleblowing. This can rise to dilemmas, because we are taught as a children कि चुगली नहीं करना चाहिए, किसी का चुगली नहीं करना चाहिए. But this can be a source of conflict in research ethics also, in your professional ethics also. If you find a colleague indulging in unethical practice or deviating from the integrity. So your co-worker is fabricating the data or suppressing certain uncomfortable findings. So whether you will complain against him or not can become an ethical dilemma, because a code of conduct demands that we should protect our colleagues, we should not whistleblow. But your larger interest to society, your moral responsibility is that his research, which is not honest research, can harm humanity. So that is called whistleblowing. So that can raise ethical dilemmas, and it will, you are on conflict, he may be your colleague, he may be your friend, your individual conflict, or when you complain or when you whistleblow, when you make it public, you are in conflict with your colleagues. So this is one situation where your ethical conflicts at individual level as well as with your colleagues can come. So that are situations, and in the recent past, these situations have become quite common. Share, enable scientists to build on each other's work. That is also ethical. That is proper citation. You cannot steal other person's research, plagiarism, or if you have to use other person's work, you share it and you give the citation or credit to others also, acknowledgement of other people's work. Be nice to animals. Animal ethics come, the cruelty to animals. And it is wrong to hurt people. That is non-maleficence. This is another important principles of ethics. First, do no harm, non-maleficence. In childhood also, we are taught not to hurt people. Then help others, beneficence. This again is a principle of ethics. So now we have had three principles: integrity, non-maleficence, and beneficence. And respect for others, autonomy. Other person has some rights. So respect those rights, informed consent, take a call, not to be under pressure of the investigator to give consent. That is autonomy. Or indirect pressure, not to be exploited by his or her poverty. That is autonomy. So all the five principles are covered in this. That is integrity, non-maleficence, beneficence, autonomy. So three principles. And avoid doing two things at once. That is conflicts of interest. You should not have any conflict of interest when you are doing research. Like you are working for a company and you are trying to promote there in your research work. You are trying to collect data which helps your company. So you are doing two things at one time. If you are working for a company, you should not undertake research. Ideally, if you are undertaking, you have to declare it, your conflict of interest. Look both ways before crossing the street. That is the risk-benefit analysis. Risk-benefit analysis. So every intervention has got some risk and every intervention has some harm. Every intervention has some risk and every intervention has some benefit. So if the benefit is much more than the risk, then only you should do the research. Otherwise, it is not ethical to do that research. So you see, these, as I was saying, all the principles, even in the, we will be talking about the guidelines, ICMR guidelines, then World Medical Assembly guidelines are the Helsinki Declaration. So all these guidelines are there. But they all have been, if you just recollect your childhood or early school years, all these have been taught by your parents, by your teachers in moral science. So these, as I said, all these are the covered. Respect for autonomy, that is the liberty, privacy, self-determination. We ought to act in ways that do not interfere with decision and actions of autonomous individuals. Too much of compensation for participation in research is also, you are trying to interfere with autonomy, because particularly in poor communities, you are exploiting the poverty. Similarly, if you want to do research on employees, again, there is a hierarchy. So those are vulnerable groups. So that autonomy may be, I mean, it may not be on paper, but there is, the person wants to please the employer, or you are a doctor and you are trying to, you are a teacher, you want doing experiments with medical students. The students may give consent because of your rank or your position. So that is not true autonomy. These are known as vulnerable groups, very poor people, marginalized people. So their autonomy, one has to, if you are doing your appraisal of ethics, of research ethics, you have to see whether they are not unduly exploited. The autonomy, you have to have assertive action to ensure their autonomy. They will not be victimized if they refuse consent. The student will not be victimized. The patient will not be victimized. That has to be spelled out. They should have a free say whether to take part in research or not to take. No direct or indirect. Similarly, prisoners, soldiers, they are all vulnerable groups. They may be under pressure to give the consent. So all this has to be critically appraised. Then non-maleficence is duty to avoid harming others. We ought to act in ways that do not cause needless harm. Any intervention, what can be the worst situation, what harm can occur. And that has to be matched with the next principle, that is beneficence. That the individual, what individual will benefit from the research and what the larger community, humanity will benefit from the research. So we have to weigh that, explain to the patient that this is the harm, this is the benefit, and let the participant take the call. That is the autonomy. So all these principles are seamlessly, they interact with each other, nothing in isolation. Beneficence, maleficence has to be explained and autonomy has to be ensured. And justice, that is equity, that all research participants should be treated equally irrespective of their economic status, their class, their religion. The very rich people, earlier they may be many times these poor countries are used as petri dish for research for unknown drugs. So that is not fair. Or certain groups may be used, or prisoners may be used. So that is not fair. So all that is again violation of autonomy principle also, besides the injustice. And we will give example. There was a famous example, the Tuskegee trials. So most of these principles were reiterated after the Tuskegee trials by the Belmont report. And these are the 4 principles. And the 5th principle is the integrity. There should be high level of research integrity. So sometimes autonomy also includes the, you see here also I'll give some examples where there can be clash of principles. Like autonomy also means that the patient, the participant or patient has the right of confidentiality. That if you come to know something about the patient, you are not supposed to disclose it to the other, besides consent. But sometimes what happens, there may be a clash that suppose there is a, you are finding during a research, you find a person is suffering from some highly transmissible disease, say sexually transmitted disease, say HIV positive. Now, if he is married, then the other person, that his partner, wife, should not be harmed, no harm to the wife. So that may be a conflict whether you have to tell the wife. Suppose you ask him and he says, no, I want my egg to be confidential, I don't want to disclose to my wife. Then the dilemma comes ki whether you have the right to inform his wife that your husband is HIV positive. Here the conflict can come because your duty to the participant patient is confidentiality, but your duty to the wife, if both are your patients, your duty to the wife is that she should not harm. So here the only way is to counsel the husband, counsel the wife, and again you have to try to get the consent rather than directly informing others or his friends or his employer about his data, which can stigmatize him. So these are some of the issues which can come. I am just giving an example which has come to me, but there are many situations like this. Some psychiatric cases also, a person may be having tendencies of harming others or self-harm. So there are certain situations like that. Then there are sometimes difficulties in implementing these principles in a particular situation. Faced with life circumstances and dilemmas, individual patients may be difficult to apply these principles or sometimes to interpret it in a particular situation and to rank it. I mean, whose benefit you want more. Like a person has got a communicable disease. In research ethics also, you are doing some survey, you find then whether to isolate him, then you are encroaching on his autonomy. But if you don't isolate, he may spread to others. So where the risk? So how do you rank the larger good or the individual good? Or say smoking also, that a person has a right to smoke, but passive smoking is harmful. So now they change the laws that you cannot smoke in public places to protect the beneficence of others. So inadequate, so sometimes there may be very complex human dimensions and bioethical dilemmas. So in biomedical and behavioral research, protection of rights and welfare of individuals are the first priority. Nuremberg Code, if you are aware of it, during the Second World War, there was a lot of atrocities in the name of research on Jews by the Germans, the Hitler. And after that, the Nuremberg trials was there for war crimes. And Nuremberg Code was came into being. That is, the research on human beings has to be free from these violations of torture, of lack of autonomy. All research participants cannot be forced to take part in research, because during the German atrocities, Nazi era, lot of such research was done. You are aware of it. Heat, cold, extremes of heat, extremes of cold. So voluntary, yeah, those were the beginnings of the international agreement on research ethics. And all this have to be reviewed by Institutional Ethical Committee. And this Nuremberg Code was established. After that, in 1964, I think, it was more streamlined by World Medical Assembly under the Declaration of Helsinki. Declaration of Helsinki, since 1964, there is a document, Declaration of Helsinki. And 1964 onwards, it has been revised number of times. The latest revision is last year only, 2024. I will be giving the reference. You can access it from the net. The latest revision to the Declaration of Helsinki, ethical principles for research in human subjects. And then there are all those, basically it covers these principles only, which we have discussed. And then, of course, we have got the Indian Council of Medical Research guidelines also for research on human subjects. That also, I will give you the reference. You can download the PDF. It is a 187 pages document. So that I am just giving you the conceptual basis, and the expansion you can read at your leisure. Indian Council of Medical Research documents, guidelines for research on human subjects. I'll be giving you the reference. So there have been over the years, there have been changes in paradigm due to discoveries of treatment in research situations, like earlier, most of the drugs were untested, and most of the treatment, in fact, most of the interventions were very barbaric and very harmful. So many people never used to give consent. And it was done on vulnerable population to test it and refine it, any intervention. Now there is a shift in paradigm, the other way around. Newer drugs are coming, newer modalities of treatment coming, which have a promise of being of great beneficence. So in this, what happens, the more privileged class try to get themselves enrolled in clinical trials. So again, you see the principles of justice or principles of equity, that earlier you are exploiting the poor, now you are benefiting the privileged class for trying a new drug. So these are some of the changing paradigm which are bringing ethics, and you have to, as an ethical principle, you have to see that neither the poor are exploited or neither the privileged are getting extra benefit or VIP quota into a trial. There should be equal representation, irrespective of social class, privilege, or marginalized. So maybe difficult sometimes, but these are the conceptual dilemmas that many people, particularly terminal disease, they try to get into because they don't have many years with conventional treatment. They may go into to get into a trial. And the trial also, you see, in the last paragraph is written, use a placebo. Earlier trials were given with a placebo as a control. Now It is unethical nowadays because there are better treatments are available. So you have to give the treatment and the other group the newer treatment. Now sometimes it happens the conventional treatment is totally, I mean, not very good, and the new treatment promises more benefit. So again, the dilemma comes whether it is ethical to deprive the control group of the best treatment. So there can be certain guidelines in advance, the stopping rules, either way. Like if you find a new modality of treatment is very bad, it is harming the intervention, then you can stop the trial. Or the other way around, you find the benefit is, you have planned a study for 1 year or 2 years, and within 3 months you find that drug is very good, it is benefiting, then it is unethical to deprive the control group of the benefit. So the trial can be stopped. So all this protocol, all these provisions can be made in advance, either to, even if the drug is very bad, there is an ethical dilemma. Even if the drug is very good, there is an ethical dilemma, both ways. At least one of the arm is getting, having either not the beneficence and some, or the maleficence, harm. Drug is bad, there is you are violating the principle of harm. Drug is very good, you are, and by not giving it to the other mom, you are violating the principle of beneficence. So these are some of the examples I am giving just for illustration. So trial designs. You see, this is now we are coming to the Tuskegee trials, which was a landmark, which again, because you see, after the Nazi atrocities, everything came up, the Nuremberg Code and all that. Then the 1964, the Declaration of Helsinki. So, but in practice, many things are made on paper, but there are a lot of violations in practice, and particularly in communities where there is a lot of racial discrimination, which was there in the United States for many years. So, keeping someone on trial for many years, the trial design, suppose you have planned a trial, like you planned a cohort study, which they actually did in the Tuskegee trials. This is a famous trial. You can see the details when you can do a Google search. You will get the details of the Tuskegee trials. I'll briefly explain overview of the trial. The Tuskegee trials was a cohort study. So the study design was a cohort study to study the natural history of syphilis. So you understand? Because this was started in the 1930s. That time there was no treatment for syphilis. There were very drastic treatment like arsenic or heavy fever or something, but there was no decent treatment for syphilis. So they wanted to study the natural history of syphilis. Syphilis, the initial local lesion is there, then other organs are involved, then there is neurosyphilis. So it progresses like that. So they were studying the natural history. That was a cohort study. So they have made a design and there was no treatment. So it was perfectly ethical when the study was started in 1930s, because there was just supportive treatment, syphilis, no antibiotics, 1930s. So, but again, there was an ethical violation. This was, the study subjects were the people who were colored. And they were, I think, working on some land or farm or very marginalized people, blacks. So they started in that. And this study continued since till 1970s, I think 1972. They just followed it up. They identified people with neurosyphilis. What was the most unethical thing in this trial was, penicillin was discovered, I think 1940s or 50s. Penicillin was a very good treatment for syphilis. It cured syphilis. It prevented patient going into neurosyphilis. Fantastic treatment. They withheld the penicillin because they were kept in the dark. The study subjects were poor. They were of a particular race in America. And this study continued and many people died. Many developed neurosyphilis and it was highly unethical. Firstly, the selection, okay. After that, highly unethical was, beneficence was there. When the drug was discovered, they should have stopped the trial, It was unethical, and penicillin was established to be very good in treating syphilis. So it was a highly unethical to deprive the study participants of the benefit of treatment. They could have been cured, and they were harmed, and there was no autonomy. So all the principles were violated: justice, autonomy, no harm, equity, and consent. There was no consent. They were just misguided. They were given some ration or some compensation. Again, there was no autonomy. Autonomy because they were almost slaves. They were marginalized people. So there was no autonomy. There was harm. There was lack of beneficence, and there was lack of equity. So this some of the people who had conscience in US, and more, to top it all, this Tuskegee trials was conducted by the National Institute of Health. I mean, by the American government funding. Now it is called national. It was government funding, and it was many people in the administration. They felt bad. Their conscience hurt, and activism started, and this came to light, and this became a big scandal. And 1978, in response to that, the Department of Health, Education and all, which is now called Health and Human Services, Robert Kennedy has become in charge of that. They brought out the Belmont report in 1978, HSS. Now it is called HHS. That time it was called Department of Health and Education or something like that. So they brought out the Belmont report, and they reinforced these ethical principles that no trial can be done without observing those principles. So this Tuskegee trial is a landmark illustration of how ethical principles can be violated even by government research bodies. And in 1997, the President of America at that time, Bill Clinton, he made a public apology. 1997. There is a photo of him also with one of the survivors of the Tuskegee trial. So this is one very illustrative case. Other hand, then there are other trial designs which are not very ethical. I mean, not exactly, we cannot call it unethical because of the limitations of sometimes knowledge, sometimes information, sometimes technology. Like many times, we evaluate surrogate markers instead of the endpoint, because endpoint may be difficult to measure. So you conclude that this intervention is good and give it to a large population. So this also can be, I mean, in the hindsight, you may find it may be unethical when subsequent events bring out that sometimes the surrogate markers can mislead. Also important point for vaccine trials. Like, for instance, the HPV vaccine trial is an important illustration. Like most of the HPV vaccine is recent, 8 to 10 years, and it is supposed to prevent against cervical cancer. Certain strains are there. The cervical cancer occurs after 20 years, 30 years. So no trial has been there for so long. So they have taken surrogate markers. They give the vaccine and they have taken, I mean, some of the cases of most of the cases they say is associated with HPV, human papillomavirus strain 16 and 18, and few more strains. So they have vaccine against this. So they have taken the clearance of this HPV, human papillomavirus 16-18 as a surrogate marker, and certain precancerous lesions. Carcinoma intra CIN1, first stage and second stage, not the third stage also, or the cancer, because they did not have too much time. Maybe trial may be continuing. So on the basis of that, they have said that it is efficacious, but which is not the actual endpoint. So this, as the technology, as the time evolves or the technology, so this again, the trial requires revision of their conclusions, whether it really protects or you are taken a surrogate markers. The intermediate lesions have been taken as on today for HPV vaccine. So there are many other, like even for this vaccine trial, sometimes they don't take the hospitalization or death, which may be very rare. They may take the antibody levels as a efficacy of a vaccine. So these are, we have to consider as a ethically whether at that time it may be ethically permitted, but we require a constant review of the science as we have more information. So as I said, ethics can be difficult, and we have to see the whether the disease is causing high mortality or there is actually a need for emergency use. So most of the, I think a lot of education we had in the pandemic. So let more things come out, because things are still coming out. So this is about the Tuskegee trial. This is the trial. These are the investigator, and if you see, all the participants are of a particular race. A doctor draws blood from one of the Tuskegee test subjects. This trial started in 1932, and it ended, or it was truncated because of a lot of activism in 1972. And you see, in between this, the syphilis treatment was discovered. Penicillin was discovered, antibiotics were discovered. So they were not given the antibiotics because they were in that trial for natural history of syphilis. So location Tuskegee, and the funding agency was US Public Health Service. So now it is, I think, NIH, and they are doing mischief since then only. 1930, that American Public Health Service or NIH is up to mischief. Now they are giving funding to Wuhan lab, and those days they were doing this Tuskegee trial. ये सुधरेंगे नहीं है. So subject recruitment for some patients, yeah, again, as I said, desperation, some people may enter a trial. Some patients entering a trial may the only way to obtain treatment or care. Here there is a autonomy principle, which is under pressure. I mean, which is under likely to be violated. Exploiting the poverty, they don't have treatment, ko chalo thoda treatment milega if I take part in a trial. So this affects autonomy. Then who takes care of research participants who has no other health options when they withdraw from participation? So indirectly also you are penalizing them. Okay, don't take part in the trial, and then didn't have access to treatment. So all these things come when you are framing the informed consent form. Then research allocation also, sometimes the disease of affluence may get more funding than the disease of poverty, which is like there is more research grants as on today for treating baldness rather than for research on malaria. So there is more research. Competing interest between vaccines, behavioral research, treatment, basic research, vis-a-vis applied research. So these are some of the other issues which comes at the policy making or allocation of budget. So ethics can be at all levels, at the highest levels also, when you are allocating budgets, particularly all countries have got their resource constraints. So you may try to allocate more research for, say, vaccine, or do you allocate more for vaccine, or you allocate more for, say, hygiene, sanitation, water supply? You are discovering vaccine for, say, rotavirus, you are discovering vaccine for other infections, but whether that same money, if you have a better water supply, you won't have diarrheal disease. So all these are dilemmas, and as we have said in the beginning, there are a lot of extraneous factors which trample upon ethics, like political pressures, financial conflicts of interest. The pharmaceutical industries have interest in profit. They don't want you to be healthy, because if you have good supply of water, good supply, good hygiene, sanitation, good nutrition, healthy living, so those money, if you ethically you ask person, if you call for an ethical judgment, those are more important. Money should go there rather than for the neglect of this will end in disease and for pharmaceutical and vaccine. So these are again you are helpless because the policymakers are influenced sometimes because of their perception also that these will be the panacea. You have vaccine for everything, you have drugs for everything, you can take care of illness. So that can be the, and they may honestly think so. So again, it's a value judgment. I mean, they may think I am ethical. How can you deprive people of life-saving vaccines? How you can deprive people of life-saving medicines? And the other person may be feeling they will not get sick if you have good food, good nutrition. So those dilemmas are at a policy making level. But let us see what is happening. Make America healthy, maybe world also will have that same change in paradigm. Then scientific integrity and conflicts of interest. Then scientists are also under pressure. So these publish. Have I finished that? Sorry, scientists will be coming to publication subsequently. Scientists under pressure to be productive. Scientists in cooperation with the accept responsibility for ensuring integrity of research program. So the academia also have to have a lot of ethical values to do good research, but they are also under pressure to publish. Public attention to instances of scientific misconduct has raised level of public distrust in scientists and affected morale of scientists. So it cuts both ways. Some honest scientists also get demoralized because few scientists who may deviate from ethical principles, they draw attention and the public becomes anti-science. So it's not good for the scientific community, loss of trust in science. So ethics have got a lot of importance. If the people lose trust, so that can be harmful for science. And the vacuum is filled up by other people who have their own conflict of interest. So this is a conclusion. Employing bioethical principles of respect for person, beneficence, respect for person is autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice and care, adding a dose of courage, strength, wisdom, and solidarity will ensure best practice in research. So these conclusions, but as I said, we started with the Western philosophy, and subsequently, having said this, there can still be dilemma in here. And from the Eastern philosophy, I'll take a quote from Mahabharata. So this is from the Mahabharata. Draupadi's question. You are aware of the Draupadi's. Draupadi asked Bhishma, or the gathering, ask him who played the game of die with Duryodhan whether he first lost himself or before losing his wife. So if he has lost himself, he cannot have. So to which the Bhishma's dilemma is, the question hangs uncomfortably over the assembly. Bhishma, grandfather of the warring cousins, attempts to answer this. It is true, Bhishma begins, that a person who has lost himself in the game is no longer free to stake what belongs to him. Since Yudhishthira did lose himself first, he was not competent to stake Draupadi. On the other hand, a wife does belong to the husband. So again, there is a conflict that a person has lost himself, so he cannot decide for others. But since wife is belong to husband those days, so again he can take a call, and so ultimately he cannot answer. He concludes, as dharma is subtle, my dear, I failed to resolve your question in the proper way. So dharma can say, think that was ethics in Mahabharata. So even Bhishma has got the dilemma ki he cannot understand what is right, what is wrong in this situation. So this is about the research ethics. As I said, I'll just briefly, I'll give you some references which you can download. So these are the two references. As I said, the latest edition of Ethics in Research, World Medical Association Declaration of Helsinki. The latest version of Declaration of Helsinki has been published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association. This is 2013, I think, 2013. So you can download it from the net. And the ICMR National Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical and Health Research involving human participation, available from the site I have given. This is a 187 pages document which will give you the all the details. But these are the basic principles, and it will give you for. So having covered this, I will just rapidly go through some part two, the types of publication misconduct. I think you may be aware of it, but just so these are the publication misconduct outcome that, as I said, publish or perish, that rat race in publication is giving rise to. So this is also part of research ethics. You have to publish ethically also. Data fabrication, false data, falsification, plagiarism without giving, and salami publication. One research you are cutting into small pieces to increase the number of papers. Gift authorship, a person who has not worked, you are adding his name to author list. And ghost authorship, somebody else writes for you and you are named as author, because most of the pharma company do this. They make your research and they will take one person, some faculty in a academic institution, and make him the author. So ghost authorship. Going beyond this, there are many practices again which fall in the gray zone, like in all ethics. So impact of Paris, you now many universities, due to international ranking, they want to publish you to publish in high impact factor journal. And Goodhart's law, as soon as a metrics are used as indicator, people start gaming it. So that is, and the metrics lose the importance. That is Goodhart's law. Once you have a metric to measure something, everybody starts gaming it, and it loses its value. So peer-reviewed paper earns more worth on metrics. Number, quantity is getting precedence over quality. So we are getting poor quality research. The misuse impact factor currency to a paper. Before anybody has read it, you get your metrics. So these are some of the misuse of impact factor. I think I have discussed it in an earlier talk, which is in the, I think in the your video. You can hear that video. Neo forms fake peer review. Sometimes the peer reviewers are fake peer reviewers. Sometimes authors review their own papers by creating fake identity. Hacking journal databases. You see, now digital arrest is there. Sometimes the journals also get arrested by hackers, and people interfere with them. Additional authors in papers already in press. Sometimes papers are accepted and there is a rate. If you want to be third author, you pay so much. You want to be fourth author, accepted paper, itna. So all those racket is going on. Citation network among authors. You cite my work, I cite your work. So that is to increase the impact factor. University set up paper mills to boost publication counts. So all these are academic bodies which should take a call actually, whether to give so much of weight to publication. Misconduct and questionable practices getting blurred. Cynics can be the critic of the literature has stated the most common cause for those who commit fraud is a long career. So these are all unfortunate things, but we are seeing all this. So how to cope with publication? First, establish there is misconduct, difficult in some cases involving questionable practices which may not reflect on the true worth of the paper, better or worse. Flawed research, on the other hand, can harm humanity. So here the ethics come. Plagiarism is theft without citation. Duplicate publication and self-publication also misconduct, as they unfairly inflate the author's publication count. When there is clear evidence of misconduct, the paper should be retracted, the sooner the better, because if it is in circulation, it will misguide humanity and cause harm. So these are some of the, you can download it. COPE, Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE guidelines are there just for yourself also, and to appraise other people. You can be a reviewer for other people's work. List of situations where editors should consider retraction when papers, unethical papers need to be retracted. And once it is retracted, it is written over the paper, retracted, retracted. Everybody can see, and the author is actually has a stigma all his or her life, academic stigma, because that paper pops up every time retracted. So one has to be careful. So retraction again, many papers they go through. It's not easy to detect publication misconduct. So these are some how to check publication macro environment. So how to control this publication misconduct. As I said, macro environment of publication should be unhealthy competition. I mean the institutions are involved in this. Support for retraction should be an important part. Researchers reporting scientific fraud should be rewarded instead of being ridiculed. Again, the whistleblower. As I said, the whistleblower dilemma is also ethical dilemma. Whether to report other people committing research misconduct, you become unpopular. They should be rewarded instead of being ridiculed or harassed. Publishers can have a corpus to pay. Again, these are things which sound good on paper. Ethical hackers. Academic institutions can give incentive to those attempting to correct the literature. All retraction should not be setbacks. Self-retraction, sometimes you can make a mistake honestly, like a miscalculation or something, so that the author himself or herself can ask for a retraction and giving the reasons I am retracting myself, I have discovered some flaws. So those papers are not, those people should not be stigmatized. So these are some of the references on publication misconduct. So again, COPE guidelines and other things. And so I think I have finished now. Thank you. So I can take a few if there are some questions.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Are there any questions from anyone? Sir, if there are many other students also, sir, who are enrolled for this, if there is something coming up, I'll send it across to your email, sir.
No problem. No
Yes,
problem.
sir.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, sir. Like I know you're very busy, and it is
Thank you.
always generous whenever we call you. You just come and do this for us, sir. And from the expertise you have as an editor of a very reputed journal and the seamless publication you have for decades, it will really inspire us and our students as well, sir.
Thank
And
you.
we look forward to your support and guidance in the future as well, sir.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you. Thank you.
Harshida, please end the recording.
Okay, I am logging out. Huh?